I also added raspberries. What's up guys? Today we're going to talk about how to calculate your macros and your calories, and at the same time we're going to do a nice little recipe for some chocolate cookies. We're going to talk about whether you need to calculate macros because it might not work for all of you, and then I'm going to talk about the first thing, which is working out what your calories should be, and then actually working out what your macro split could be to work for you. And in the meantime, I'm going to be making some cookies. So the ingredients are really simple. You should find them or an alternative in your cupboard. So I've got some oats here to start off with, but you can use flour if you want. I've got a protein powder. It is a chocolate flavour, but you can use a vanilla flavour and then just add more cocoa. I've put in some cocoa nibs, but again, if you just chop up a bar of chocolate, that's absolutely fine. I've also used some unsweetened, just cocoa powder. This is the soup cream that I love, but of course feel free to use some maple syrup, some honey, whatever you have in the cupboard. This is some tahini paste, but again, just use some peanut butter, whatever, as an alternative. It works just as well. And then I've got one egg as well. So I'm going to put all of these in a bowl. You don't really need to worry about what order to put them in. Just chuck them in, to be honest. And then once I'm mixing, we'll talk a little bit about how to calculate your calories. So the first thing I think is, like, do you actually need to calculate your macros? I think it really depends what your goal is. If you just want to get a little bit healthy, sorry, I'm trying to like multitask. I don't think I'm very good at it. So if you want to calculate your, no, I can't multitask.
Probably just have to mix.
All I have to do is mix and talk. I can't do both. No, I'm so mixing, I can't concentrate on what I want to say. Okay, so, do you need to calculate macros? To be honest, I think it depends on your goal. I think if you are new to working out and you really want to make a change into having a healthier lifestyle, it can be useful just as like a guide so that you know how much food you should be taking in for your daily needs. If you want to get really, really lean for a competition, or you want to have maximum performance, again, it can be really useful just as a guide to help you on your way. But in those cases, if you are tracking, I don't think it's super important to track to the calorie or to the macro. Like for me, I definitely use MyFitnessPal as like a guide. I have like about a 300 calorie range where I'll fall into. Sometimes I'll go massively over, and that's okay too, but I really just use it as a guide. I don't get too hung up over like the numbers and like things to the gram. I think there's a right time for someone to track macros. Personally, for me, I think it was the wrong time when I had an eating disorder, because it just kind of worsened the whole thing, and if I went over, like, I just feel really, really guilty, and it really didn't help that much. So I think it depends what stage you're at. If you're not going to get really, if you know that you're going to get really, really guilty if you go over your calories, which you shouldn't, but just because you see that red number, then it might not be the best thing for you. Just be mindful of it. And again, if you just want to lose a little bit of weight or just have healthier meals, then you don't need to track macros. Okay, so this is looking a little bit dry, so I'm just going to add some egg whites. Let's see. I mean, really, this is some bucket chemistry going on here, because I'm just winging it. I feel like you can get away with a lot in cooking. Okay, so I ran out of baking paper, which this day is going really well. well. But I've lightly, very lightly greased this baking tray, and I want to make mini cookies. So I'm just going to use a teaspoon and put these in. But if you've decided that you do want to calculate your macros, the first thing to work out is your total daily energy expenditure. That's the number of calories you burn every single day. And I mentioned this in my metabolism video, which I'll link you to. But you can work this out, and it really depends on like gender, your activity levels, your hormone profile, your body composition. It's very, very different for each individual. So I think macronutrientcalculator.com is really useful because it takes those things into account, and it doesn't underestimate calories. I find a lot of other calculators out there do underestimate calories, which I personally think is dangerous, because I think the more you eat, the better. But that's just my take on things. It's just what helps me perform best. So once you've worked out the number of calories that you need, then it's all about working out what goal you want to achieve. So, do you want to gain? Do you want to gain weight? Do you want to maintain? Or do you want to lose weight? Whatever your goal is, my biggest point of advice is to make small, gradual changes. It means that you'll get the results you want, and it also means that you don't shock your body. So your body will gradually adapt to those changes that you're giving it, and it will just work a lot more in your favour. Or at least that's what I've experienced in the past for me. I'm still adding them. I'm trying to give them a little bit of space between them. But they will like spread out a little bit. Or usually they do. Maybe I've messed up the recipe, who knows? It's bucket chemistry after all. I usually just like drop them, and I don't like spread them out, because I kind of let them cook, but then I don't want to overcook them so that they go dry. So I like to leave, when they come out of the oven, it almost looks like the middle bit isn't that cooked, but then as it gets colder, it cools down and it just is kind of like more chewy, which is what I like. That's gonna be what I spatula into my mouth, uncooked, and I'm gonna put this in the oven. The oven is heating up. I'm gonna put it to 180 degrees, which I believe is 350 Fahrenheit, for those of you who are in the US. And then I'm literally gonna put these in for about 4 minutes. So it's really, really not long. It's actually a really quick recipe. I should make these more often. But yeah, now we're gonna talk about adjusting, because even though you found like how many calories you need, you don't know what macros work for you until you try them out. It's really trial and error, and it's listening to your body as well. So start off with like a moderate split. So usually it's like 50% carb, 30% protein, 20% fat, and then stick with that. For 4 weeks, stick with it. Do all of the normal training that you usually do. Listen to your body throughout the whole process. Do you feel tired during your workouts? Do you feel more moody? Do you feel grumpy? Can you sleep less? Have you lost a huge amount of weight? Have you gained loads of weight? You can only make those decisions after about 4 weeks. If you do it before, you don't know whether it's like just water retention and bloating, or maybe you were ill, or things like that. So really give it the time to see whether it works for you, and be honest with yourself. For me, I realised that I didn't have enough carbs. That's because when I was training, after half an hour, I just felt absolutely dead, completely exhausted, and then even throughout the day, I'd crash at about 12 o'clock. I don't really have any caffeine either, so for me, that was a sign that I probably needed to increase my carbs. I increased my carbs after 4 weeks, and I felt a whole lot better. Other signs that you might need to adjust your macros: if you feel like you're losing a lot of muscle, or you feel like you're losing strength, again, maybe your protein isn't high enough. Maybe you need to increase your protein. And if you feel like you're feeling more and more down, and your workouts aren't going as well, you might need to increase your fats as well. Fats, even though like it had a bad rep before, it's still really important. You need fat to take up certain vitamins which are fat soluble. So it's really important not to decrease your fat too much. So it's really about finding that balance that works for you and your training. A lot of you have asked me what I think about the keto diet and things like that. I think it really depends what you're training. For me, keto wouldn't work. I've been in ketosis before, about 3 years ago when I was doing my triathlon, and I had no performance whatsoever. I had no glycogen in my muscles. I couldn't do any exercise at a high level when I had no carbs in me, and that's just what worked for me. And now I really have now I eat a lot of carbs, and I feel like my performance is really good. But it's really about being honest with yourself and finding out what works for you. But you do need to give yourself 4 weeks to really find out whether or not you need to change your macros up. These are now going to go in for 4 minutes. I always put them at the shelf where I can visually see them, so that I know like what's going on, because it can go from like not cooked to burnt really quick, or at least it has in my experience. Maybe I'm just a terrible cook, who knows. So 4 minutes is up. I'm just going to take these out. And whatever macros you decide to go with is completely fine, and actually it means that you can just adjust the foods that you eat. I always like to eat lots of volume because it keeps me feeling full. I feel like I've eaten loads of food. Even though I am eating loads of food, I just make sure that I have a lot of volume. And yeah, you can even make sweet treats fit your macros too. For these cookies, each one has 4 grams of protein, 3.5 grams of carbs, and 2 fat. So I'm probably gonna have, if not all of them, like at least half of them, because I have a massive sweet tooth. But yeah, it just means that even though you don't have to compromise on sweet things, you can just like mix it up and see what goes, really. So yeah. I also added raspberries because I love raspberries, and we have loads in the garden as well. That's the end of this video. I hope you found it useful. Hope it helped you on your way to tracking your macros if that's what you want to do, and that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and if you want the recipe to this, it's in the description box below. So I'll see you guys very soon. Bye.